Guess where you just got into? Cool guy zone.
Welcome back, my fellow warrior poets, to episode 2 of Pondering the Meta, a series in which we slow things down a bit and take a more diagnostic approach to understanding the squad metagame. In this episode, we'll be diving into the dissimilarity between attacking and defending. Some say it's unbalanced, and that attacking is just too hard. I think it's right where it should be. Personally, I like a good challenge, maybe even bordering on masochism sometimes. As a quick disclaimer, I have a lot of nebulous thoughts about realism as it pertains to a game like Squad, and some of those thoughts found their way into part 1 of this script. I like to indulge those tangents when writing these episodes, but I'm not trying to bait and switch anyone. If you're just here for the brass tacks Squad strategy, skip ahead to part 2. But for those of you that don't mind a bit of abstraction, One month after the ICO release, the general consensus is that attacking is definitely harder than before. I think that over time, this will change as players get better. As it stands now, there are some people that think it's so difficult that it warrants immediate action by the developers, primarily by making it easier to shoot accurately while also being mobile. My thoughts on this are, don't touch it. Just let it be, at least for now. Maybe in the short term, give the attacking side some extra tickets on invasion game mode, but that's it. This is a problem for players to solve, not the developers. The ICO has brought Squad a step closer to better emulating firefights on a macro scale, and this has basically buffed the in-game use of real-world tactics and strategy, while the collective knowledge and skill of the player base has remained unchanged. My theory is that in time, that gap will close as players figure out what works and as the community plays another 1 million rounds of Squad. I'll expand more on this later, but from a game design perspective, attacking and defending should have an asymmetrical relationship. I believe so strongly in this that I paused working on several other scripts in order to try and bang this one out so as to more meaningfully contribute to the community discourse on this matter. Broadly, my main reasoning here is that's how it is in the real world, especially when dealing with conventional ground forces like in Squad. Asymmetry introduces challenges, and triumphing over challenges is rewarding. Certain aspects of player behavior are immutable. No matter how hard attacking is, players are still going to do it. Why? Because it's fun. It increases the complexity of the game and raises the skill ceiling, which further rewards teams that work together. This encourages players to leave the hamster wheel of modern FPS game loops and think outside the box in order to win games. All of the S-tier competitive games have one thing in common: an absolutely massive gap between the bottom 10% of players and the top 10% of players. I'm talking a skill and difficulty curve that is literally exponential. Increasing game complexity should be encouraged. Just be careful not to alienate the noobs too hard, because they're delicate and afraid, and we love them. I think of Squad as a blend between a firefight simulator and a sandbox. It's at its best when it's able to foster and effectuate the use of real-world tactics. The term realism is so overused that it's becoming meaningless when discussing milsims and Squad and whatever, but the game is at the point now where core infantry concepts are as usable in-game as they are in real life. Things like bounding Overwatch, suppressing fire superiority, surprising the enemy on their flank, and capitalizing on the resulting confusion. In this sense, I think the difficulty of attacking is exactly where it should be. In the real world, an attacking force has always suffered from certain major disadvantages. This has been true historically, as well as in terms of modern engagements. Wikipedia has some interesting reads on this subject matter under List of Military Disasters and Pyrrhic Victories. Links in the description if that's something you're into. Now, warfighting is complex, and it's conceivable that an attacker could have the upper hand depending on the scenario. And that speaks to my larger point, which is that when it comes to balancing offense and defense, skill expression should favor a team's collective game smarts, planning, and execution, instead of having things be put on rails by mechanics. As OWI continues to tinker, I'd like to see them arrange the sandbox in such a way as to be more hands-off on this type of thing, so that the player base can chew on things and solve complex problems on their own. The player base will be able to solve problems in a way that OWI won't be able to predict. That's the nature of iterative systems applied to online gaming. The players can do this by leveraging such phenomena as crowdsourced tactics and collective knowledge of the metagame. Just plug the hive mind into it and let it run. If OWI does it right, there should be at least some decent overlap between what works in game and what works in the real world. They just have to nudge it in the right direction. Big picture though, attacking has always been harder than defending. Some of the reasons for this that apply to both the real world as well as in squad are: mobilizing your force and moving it across enemy territory is costly and has consequences. Staying put is just easier in a practical sense. Moving requires prior coordination and planning, and plans have flaws, and no plan is ever perfectly executed. Attackers have to move, and moving reveals your location and telegraphs your intention. Defenders can then choose to react to that and regain the initiative with the benefit of having made their decision with more information at their disposal. In the real world, this basically results in game theory. In the past, Russia and the United States have tried to shake up the Cold War metagame by pointing spy planes and satellites at enemy points of interest and flying a single aircraft straight at them, only turning at the last possible second just to watch and study how they react. Another reason is, the further you move into enemy territory, the harder it is to stay at full fighting force. Attackers suffer more from attrition, lack of supplies, food, and in squad's case, ammo and respawn tickets. Lastly, to fully seize an industrialized or otherwise developed objective, an attacker has to physically eliminate the occupiers by going from building to building, and that heavily favors the defending party. They'll benefit from cover and concealment and roadways for mobility, while the attacker has to cross open terrain, move through enemy kill zones, and clear them out one by one. In squad's case, you literally have to outnumber the enemy for a sustained period of time in order to take a flag. A defending force certainly has it easier. You'll have pre-established supply lines and logistics, so you can keep fighting for longer, and FOBs will be closer to the flags, and your flags will be closer to your main base. Defenders should also already be set up in a fortified position with time to prep and entrench and dig in like a tick. This could mean HMG nests and TOWs on the rooftops, or simply that the enemy squad had enough time to get inside a building in order to use the Murder Hole 9000, which is sometimes referred to as a window. This last one might not have a direct analog in squad, but home field advantage is real. Familiarity with the terrain is huge. There's a reason that first world militaries keep losing to guerrilla fighters. The most powerful armies in the world have lost to goat herders in the mountains of Afghanistan, rice farmers in jungles of Southeast Asia, and starving soldiers fighting for warlords in civil war-ravaged Mogadishu. Obviously, these situations are complex, and I'm glossing over a lot of complicating factors, but the point is that it's very easy to underestimate the advantages of an embedded and dedicated defending force. With all this in mind, I want both OWY and the squad player base to embrace the asymmetry. It's okay if certain aspects are unbalanced. Adapt and play around it. If you know what's unbalanced going in, that should dictate how you play. Don't play it like a lemming and walk in a straight line to an objective. Stop and use your brain. Treat it like a puzzle. Your main disadvantage as an attacker is that once things first kick off, you'll lose more tickets during the battle. So time is on your side during the setup or approach phase of the fight. It's also zero-sum, excluding the invasion game mode. Attacking a flag is just as difficult for you as it is for the enemy. In that way, things will always be balanced overall. It just means flags will change hands less often, and there will be more stalemates. But I think that's a good thing, because in my opinion, macro squad still plays too fast. There's times when objectives keep shifting so fast that it becomes almost comical. Additionally, challenges give rise to superior gameplay. Make players have to actually try. There's plenty of other mindless shooters out there. Besides, winning after a major challenge hits a lot harder too. That of course means lower lows as well, but so be it. Maybe it's just the Dwarf Fortress enjoyer in me, but with good squad mates, I'm still very much able to enjoy losing. Also, no matter how unbalanced attacking gets, players are still going to do it because it's inherently fun to be the aggressor. On top of that, squad still has a lot of ADHD-riddled players that can't sit still. Zerglings will pretty much always exist in pubs. That type of gameplay shouldn't really stand a chance competitively, and a dedicated defending squad should absolutely be able to consistently mop those players up. In fact, I'd say most players in general will prefer to attack over playing defense anyway, so bodies are going to organically trend towards flowing to objectives. People tend to hate sitting still. Holding W takes a lot less energy than actually running, so it's gonna happen more. That and patience isn't exactly super common in the gamer diaspora. I'm just spitballing, but it's probably something like a ratio of 2 to 1 of attackers to defenders. With this in mind, games will tend to draw if attacking is twice as hard as defending. My hope is that over time, the disparity that exists between the difficulty of attacking versus the difficulty of defending isn't balanced by changing core mechanics, and is instead something that is tackled by the gradual yet inevitable increase of skill in the player base. Over 6 months of playing squad, what works and what doesn't will make its way to the surface. Crowdsourced strategies will trend and influence the meta. Hopefully, the game of squad won't fundamentally change, but the way it's played will. Slowly, the gameplay should evolve as players figure out new tech. In this way, players' knowledge of the game will have an impact and hopefully correct perceived weaknesses in the gameplay without needing OWI to take direct action. So, with all that in mind, what should we start doing now to start winning more while on offense? For starters, here are some things I've identified as key advantages that attackers have that they should be leveraging in every game to the fullest extent. I consider these sort of core concepts that I try and keep in mind when I'm trying to cook up a plan on the fly when I'm running an attacking squad. Surprise. This is a potent one, but it's very easy to squander. They'll know you're coming to the active flag, but if you've taken a good approach, they shouldn't know from where. Follow the edges of rivers, keep hills between you and the flag, take your time, and be sneaky before going weapons free. Before you open fire, you'll have to make a judgment call if that one kill that you're about to take is worth trading your element of surprise for. Flanks are juicy. Make your enemy fight on 2 fronts whenever you can. Time your initial onslaught with the second squad. If you're late to the party, take the extra time to loop around a bit, and if it's a tough flag, set up flanking fobs to keep pressure up from different angles. You're fighting a stationary target. This allows you to dictate the terms of the fight. Don't force it. If you're waiting for your armor to get there, sit down, drop mortars and arty while you're waiting. Stationary targets are also very weak to smoke. Your grenadier should never die with unused smoke grenades when attacking. If you're squad leading and the fight is broken out and you think you might know where the enemy is, drop a secondary attack marker and tell your grenadier to shell it. One of the concepts that I've been repping for future episodes is running an airborne infantry squad that doesn't operate from fobs and instead drops a rally behind enemy fobs. It's a fast, low commitment play that can have high upside if things go well. It's flexible, and one of the ways I want to keep pushing the idea is, if I see a friendly squad moving to attack a flag alone, we can heli in and drop on the opposite side of the flag about 500 meters away, put down a radio, a rally, 1 mortar, and 1 ammo crate. That's 400 build and 600 ammo. That's about 50 HE mortars to shell during the approach, and 10 smoke rounds to drop as the squad makes the final push in. You only leave 1 guy to operate the mortars behind, while the rest of your squad continues to advance to rendezvous with the other attacking squad. Once all the mortar shells are dropped, dig down the radio, and the last guy can pick it up and join the rest of the squad. Mortars are loud and easy to counterattack, but if the enemy defending the flag moves off the flag to attack your mortars, that just increases the chance that the other squad is going to be able to take the flag right under their nose. In practical terms, play slow, be patient, and coordinate with other squads. Whenever you can, you should try and split the enemy's attention. If you're attacking from the east and another squad hits the flag from the west as you're moving up, you're going to split the defenders and possibly catch them overreacting to one side and running towards your allies. If you time it well, you'll flip the movement debuff over to the enemy as they shift to cover the flanks. If you don't outnumber the enemy and you're on the assault, you're almost certainly at a disadvantage. Be patient. You're better off holding tight and waiting for another squad to get in position before really kicking things off. You'll be surprised how effective it is to direct comm to a nearby squad and say, "Hey, Squad 2, this is Squad 1, we're in position and holding, we're going to wait for you to move in from the east." The slightest hint of a plan can start to set things in motion. Squad players are typically the type of people that want to coordinate. So have your squad set up in a line formation a few hundred meters off the flag, stay low, and look for easy pickoffs or quietly inch your way in while watching the map and waiting for your teammates to become more relevant on the objective. This is key because you should always attack with overwhelming advantage or not at all. Fight them with 2-to-1 odds or even more. You're typically going to have a harder time getting kills while also advancing, and they're going to have an easier time killing you. So resist the urge to zerg, and understand that you're just going to squander tickets if you don't succeed on the assault. The longer your unsuccessful attack continues, the more information the enemy is going to have about where you're coming from and how to move against you. Another way of saying it is that the longer your attack lasts without being successful, the harder it's going to get. So wait for your other squads to get in position, use all of your command assets, and roll in deep. But Colonel, I'm the only squad attacking the active flag. I can't just sit around all day. That's a great point. What you can do in that situation is start to chisel at them by knocking down any backup fobs they might have in the area.
Do you see my move doing? We're gonna go investigate that enemy TOF Michael 7 sector.
Okay, that. Are we building a fob as well?
Negative. Operate on rally one more time. I don't like dropping radios unless I, plan to defend it, as a squad should.
Swing a wide loop around the enemy flag and see if you can't find and destroy any backup fobs they might have. It's less dangerous than a frontal assault, and if you pull it off, the upside is huge. Bonus points if you can shell the flag with mortars while doing it to distract them. Ticket-wise, all things being equal, an attacking force breaks even on a successful attack at around 35 tickets lost. The numbers on this are fuzzy, as the squad wiki is very outdated on ticket info, but your team only gains plus 20 tickets after taking an enemy flag. If you and 2 other squads each die twice on an attack, you lose an APC, and the enemy digs down their radio before you finally capture a flag, guess what? You paid more than you gained from taking that flag, and it probably wasn't worth attacking to begin with. That's why it's important to blitzkrieg or slow roll, not both. If you have the enemy on the run, sometimes you can rapidly leapfrog from flag to flag and outpace them before they have time to mount a proper defense. The aggro blitz doesn't always work, but it's awesome when it does, and it results in total stops. But if you lose the tempo even a little bit, it pretty much stops working. When that happens, slow the hell down, back up, and encircle a difficult flag with fobs, drop your arty on them, and then go in all at once. It's tricky in pubs because your squad will only be 1/5 of the overall team strength, but everyone needs to be on the same page about whether you're going in full aggro or slow rolling. It can be difficult to shift gears once it stops working. Newton's first law of player motion: a player at Zerg will tend to stay at Zerg unless acted upon by an angry SL. One of the key skills you'll want to hone in on attacking is be sneaky on the infill. It's easier said than done, but it's actually a lot of fun. I've found that squad mates are typically always down to try and be stealthy if you communicate it clearly up front. The reason this works is that when you're attacking a flag, your primary goal is to get bodies within the cap radius and stay there. The worst possible thing you can do is get bogged down in an unfavorable fight while being way off of the cap radius. From the defender's point of view, this is something called interdiction. Don't be interdicted. Avoid it as best you can by not being seen for as long as you can. In some cases, that means moving fast and pulling off speedy loops around the hills. In other cases, it means moving slow and crawling through tall grass. In both cases, what you want is to be able to get inside a building, inside the cap radius, and bunker down. At that point, the fight becomes much more even in a tactical sense. One of my favorite ways to pull this off is to skip the line and just hot drop your squad in via heli or APC and dive straight into a building with a single point of ingress and just dig in and camp the stairwell. I'm not entirely sure if this is the most effective way to pull off a rapid attack, but it's so fun that I don't really care. Typically, when you're asking for a ride from an APC or a heli, if you use the term hot drop, their ears perk up and they kind of get excited. If the defenders give you lemons, say, huff the lemons and bail. Reassess and don't be afraid to call off an attack that's just costing tickets. Ask yourself, what do you have to gain from fighting off of a flag? As an attacker, you'll be exposed in moving through enemy kill zones while being less able to return fire accurately. That's a bad deal. It could have value if it's a feint that is meant to draw enemy attention away from another advancing fire team, but you should always be aware of when you're being ineffective. Being blindly optimistic will botch your attack before it even starts. You should be constantly assessing if what you're doing is actually valuable. One heuristic for this is to give yourself a limited number of attempts on the assault, as in, we're going to try to get within radius on 2 squad wipes, and if you don't gain any traction, adjust your plans. I'll say it again, the longer your attack goes without progress, the less likely you are to ultimately succeed. Squad is a lot about playing with tempo. If you lose your tempo, you're giving up your advantage. And that's what I've got so far. This element of the meta is still very much in flux, so don't take this as a gospel. Over the last few weeks I've been bashing my head against a wall, switching between attacking and defending to try and crack it open, and I think what I've outlined serves as a pretty good, loose, 30,000 foot overview for what we're up against. I'm very interested in what y'all's thoughts on this are, so feel free to comment below with your own personal TED Talk on how to make attacking easier. I love making these videos, even though they're a lot more time intensive. Constructive feedback is always welcome. And because I'm a filthy whore for the algorithm, any likes, comments, and subscriptions are very much appreciated. And thanks again for watching. Colonel out.